everybody. I'm so grateful we're here together. In the break, I went and put my body down in the meadow for just a few minutes of really feeling the earth supporting me. And I want to thank again Wendy and Roxanne for their incredible presentations this morning. So Konda, welcome. I'm grateful that you've given some beautiful Dharma talks at Upaya, and I'm so happy that you're part now of this particular family, this little clan of good friends who have been working together, practicing together, and studying together for many years about how we can really return to the earth. And your work as a social entrepreneur and as an earth and social justice activist has touched the lives of so many. And I think partly that work has been powered by your practice as a Buddhist teacher. And I'm so grateful that you have woven the Buddhist view into your service as a justice activist. So Konda is president of the Jubilee Justice Incorporation. It's a nonprofit working to bring economic equity to Black farmers and other people of color returning to the land, and really focusing on ecological sustainability by introducing an innovative way of growing rice while convening deeply transformational journeys exploring the intersection of land, race, money, and spirit. And today, when Wendy and Stephanie and I met, we felt it was really important to bring Konda's voice into the braid of what we've been doing for years as she explores the legacy of slaveholder lands and that legacy on soil and people, and about the healing of the relationship between justice and planting in a world where racism is so present. So I'm very grateful that you're in our midst, and looking forward to learning from you this afternoon, dear friend.
I am so honored to be here. This morning has filled me up with so much inspiration. Gosh, I feel so honored to be a part of this. I feel this legacy of you all practicing together on both internally and externally, the land, the earth, and your own individual lives and community. And it just feels so warm and wonderful to be a part of you. So thank you for inviting me in. I'm so blown away. This morning, both Roxanne and Wendy, wow. I was taking notes. I just kept taking notes, and I was like, stop taking notes, just listen. And so, I was in that balance. But I thoroughly enjoyed every word spoken. And yeah, there's so much to say. There's so much to say. And I guess I'll begin by saying where I'm calling in from right now. I am in Louisiana at this moment. I literally, this week, today, or yesterday, I landed in Louisiana as a permanent resident. I've been here for almost a year from California, from Oakland. And I got here a year ago, and thinking I was going to be gone for 2 months, and I never returned back home. So I just went back to Oakland and closed out my house, and it's on a Beacon's truck coming this direction now. And I am living in Louisiana, which was actually the unceded territory of the Choctaw people. And I'm in the process of learning of what the culture of the Choctaw has been about. So I'm honored to be on this land. I live on a 3,600 acre organic plantation. It's a farm, it's a former plantation that has turned into a organic farm. And it's a very interesting circuitous route of my getting here from Oakland. Never thought I would be doing this, but this is where I am. I live on a plantation. I had never set foot on a plantation. I never wanted to be on a plantation. I never spent much time in the South. That was one of the things. I'm from California, born and raised in California. And it was not a place the South brought back too much pain, honestly. And so I never really spent much time in the South, although both of my, of course, my parents, grandparents were all from here. My mother is from Texas and my father is from Georgiana, Alabama. And so I'm going to begin with that story, the stories that I know. I'm in the process and through the journeys, which I'll talk more about, Jubilee Justice journeys, through the journeys, the process that we're going through right now is just an incredible process of finding out where our story ends of what we say we know about our ancestry. Like you say, okay, well, I know where my grandparents or my great-grandparents, wherever it is, and that's all I know. We are deciding that that's actually the beginning. And we are challenging ourselves to learn way more than what we know and not stopping at that. So at this moment, I am in a deep inquiry on my ancestors. But what I do know, the story that got me to California, I'll let you know, I'll tell you. So I'm going to share screen with you all. And I hope this works. Can you all see that? Yeah, everybody can see it? Okay, good. And you can hear me okay?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Okay, so Jubilee Justice, that's the name of my nonprofit, as Roshi Jones just said. It's 2.5 years old, and it is a manifestation. It actually brought me into it as opposed to me creating it. I think that I was Jubilee Justice existed out there before me and connected me with it. And so I'm stewarding this organization with a lot of other incredible people. And so, like I said, I like to begin with my story, my family story. So this is, that's my grandmother in the chair there, my paternal grandmother, whose name was Ethel Burton. Burton was her maiden name, and she became Ethel Burton Mason. When she married my grandfather, the gentleman standing there over to the right, whose name was Charlie. This is the one photograph that I have of him. The little person on my grandmother's lap is my dad. My dad was born in 1925. So he looks like he was about a year, not even a year. So this must have been taken around that time. But they had landed in California by then. My dad was born in Georgiana, Alabama. And those are all his sisters. He had a lot of sisters. He was the only son. And he was the youngest. And so that is what this picture is, the one photograph that I have of my aunts when they were young, and my dad and my grandmother and my grandfather. So a little bit about Charlie and my grandmother. They had land in Georgiana, Alabama. And, you know, there was a time, and I'll go into this, when Black people had land, even though it was not granted with the 40 acres and a mule, but they managed to accumulate land. So they had land, and a couple of hundred acres is my understanding. Then before that, there was 600 acres in the family. And he also had a provision store, my grandfather. This is all in Georgiana in the early 1920s and teens. He had a provision store, and he also bought a car. So it was the car that got him in trouble. Basically, what happened is that word got to them that the white people in Georgiana were going to lynch him that next day. And someone was able to let him know. And he and my grandmother and these children took off and made it out of Georgiana in the middle of the night. And they eventually made their way to California. And right at the border of Mexico and California, a place called El Centro in the Imperial Valley, which is also another ag area. But that's where they ended up. And so they left behind everything. They lost their land, they lost the store. They had to start all over again, but they had the car, but they had to start all over again. And they were farmers. They were farmers. And on my mom's side, that I don't have photos of, they too were farmers. And so essentially, I grew up knowing this story, knowing that we had lost everything, knowing that they started all over again in California. And that actually what happened too is on my mother's side, she, and as I grew up, and her parents, my grandparents, I never got to meet my grandfather here. He died when my dad was young. My dad hardly knew him. But on my mother's side, on my paternal side, my maternal side, sorry, I grew up with grandparents and my parents together. They had about an acre in a place called Riverside, California. And that outside of Riverside, and that acre, we actually were food secure because we had that acre. They had a cow, they'd have a pig, they'd have chickens and turkeys, and then grow vegetables. And that is how I grew up on this one little acre in and out of my grandparents' house, knowing that we grew everything. Because my parents, they didn't really have much financial capital at all, but they had this. And that's why we were food secure. We ate because we had that land. And that was always built into me, into my DNA, understanding the importance of growing your own food. And so after emancipation in 1865, as I was starting to say that, I know hopefully you all have heard about 40 acres and a mule. It was General Sherman who they decided that they were going to give the emancipated 400,000 freely emancipated Black folks 40 acres and a mule to start their lives off with, which is kind of called reparations. And President Lincoln signed off on that, but then he was murdered. And it didn't happen when Andrew Johnson came in behind him, Jackson came in behind him. He reneged on it and it never happened. So Black folks never got that 40 acres and a mule, and they were just set off to, figure it out. But because of cooperative economics, they managed to amass, Black folks aggregated in by the 1920s, over 20 million acres of land that they were farming, because that's what they knew. That's what they knew, was how to farm. And that is what they needed, was land. And so this is just a representation of what it was like in the early years when they had land through, again, resiliency, through cooperative economics, working together and amassing land so that they could live and survive after slavery was over. Moving into the 1960s, I wanted to just explain to you that the importance of new communities. New communities, in 1969, this is when this started. It was a nonprofit organization that it was the very first land trust. The very first land trust in America were Black folks who started a land trust. Charles and Shirley Sherrod are there on the right. Charles Sherrod and some other men, they went to Israel. They got themselves to Israel to learn about the kibbutz. And they came back and said, listen, they aggregated 6,000 acres. And there were hundreds of families, of Black families, who came together and started the very first land trust in America. And it was called New Communities. All right. And This is this is them meeting down at the bottom, them talking together, figuring out how they're going to do this. It reminded me again of Roxanne and the beautiful stories of the community and how you can't do it alone. You really can't. And they came together and were able to work this land, until such time that they lost the land. And they lost the land. There was a drought for a couple of years in a row, and the USDA that is supposed to help farmers wouldn't help these Black farmers. And everyone, the white landowners around the new communities really wanted that land. And so it ended up being, they lost it and it ended up in white farmers' hands. And so this is the history of what has happened with Black farmers, is that the USDA that is there to help farmers, when it comes to Black farmers and Indigenous farmers as well, I know that they will give you a loan. First of all, everybody on the white farmers, you get a loan to plant. This is typical in America. You get a loan from the USDA to plant, and then you pay it back when you harvest. But with Black farmers, what they do is that they would give them a loan. First of all, it wasn't enough, and it was always late. They would give it to them after planting season. So when you get it after planting season and all your counterparts have already planted, seeds are in the ground, and you get your loan, past, like in the summer, past the summer, fall, and then you're trying to catch up, and then you're planting in the off season, the entire planting cycle gets off. And what happens, because also Black farmers have been over collateralized, 5 times the collateral of their white counterparts. Their farm is on hock, their houses are on hock for these loans. And when they get the loan, and then when they get out of season year after year after year, it eventually, they can't keep up and they lose their land and everything is taken. And so that is the plot. That is kind of the method by which so much land has been lost by Black farmers. But in this picture, we have them working together. So, like I said, there was a time when we were thriving, when there was land and people worked together, and after the end of slavery, really gathering their lives together. But if you see this slide here, you see that it's a big crisis now, that those times are no longer here. That 20 million acres, an aggregate of 20 million acres that Black farmers had in the 1920s is down to 2 million today, from 20 million to 2 million. That there were over 1 million farmers, Black farmers in the 1920s is down to about 44,000 today. And that the average farm land that Black farmers have is 100 acres, when it takes about 500 acres to be financially viable. So what has been calculated is that 30,000 acres a year, every year, are lost from Black farmers, are actually confiscated in the various ways that are legal. 30,000 acres a year through institutional discrimination, the USDA, the banks, private sector. Private sector will do something here in the state of Louisiana that was filled with sugarcane farmers, Black sugarcane farmers. There's 4 Black sugarcane farmers left in this state, 4. And I was working with one of them, an older gentleman that we were trying to get to save his land, because what happened is that, again, they over collateralized him. This is a man who did well, always did well, always paid back his loans, but they made the price a little higher this last year for him. And not only was he collateralizing his land, but also his home. This is a man that was in his 70s. If he lost his home, he had nowhere to go. And so he reached out, and a group of us rallied to try to help him get, to see if we can provide him with the loan that he needed. And bypass the USDA. Sadly, that didn't happen. We tried hard. We weren't able to do that. And I honestly, in this moment, don't know the exact result of where he is right now. But this notion of also the banks are involved, the USDA is involved, and private sector. With private sector, for example, the sugarcane processing mill. The sugarcane processing mill would make a deal that when you harvest your sugarcane, it'll go to the mill and they'll process it. But sometimes they would just renege and say, no, not going to do it. And you couldn't get that cane anywhere else. You couldn't get it processed and it just dies in the field. When your cane dies in the field, you've lost your land. So it has been so many different ways of how land losses happen. That has been a collusion, honestly, between the USDA, between banks and private sector. There seems to be a conventional wisdom that Black folks are not supposed to have land. And so all of the forces have been working to extract land. And this is the result. This is where we are right now. This is the crisis. The Black farmer is in a deep crisis at this moment. And that is why, if you've heard about the new USDA and the new bill that is connected to COVID, that is doing a debt relief, $5 billion, $4 billion is debt relief for Black farmers. And some people seem to call it, this is reparations, and we don't do reparations in the United States. It's a way of just trying to fix something that has been so much harm for so many Black farmers. That debt relief is actually getting them out of the debt that they've been in, that was supposed to have happened in another class action lawsuit that didn't happen. And so this is what's on the table right now, and we'll see what happens. There's a lot of questioning whether or not it's really going to happen and how it's going to happen. And there's a lot of pushback about it. But all it's trying to do is say, we know what has happened. We know what has happened. And is there a way that the US government can atone for the blatant discrimination against Black farmers and creating this crisis that they're in right now? So what does repair look like? I have, as I said, come from a family that, in addition to being farmers, in my understanding, the importance of food, the importance of food security, the importance of land, the importance of nutrition as well. I also come from a family that has been a very activist family. My mother has been someone who, her entire life, has always stood up for those who have less than she or who are voiceless. And she taught that to all of us, 4 children in my family. I'm the youngest of 4. And, she was the one who, if there was a bully on the schoolyard, and if you didn't stand up for the person who was being bullied, I don't know if you should even come home. She really, really stressed that we stand up for people. And so my whole life has been informed by those values of community. She really was a big part of, as I say was, because my mom has passed away, but she was a big part of the Black and brown community where I grew up. And so we grew up knowing and understanding that our job is to take care of other people and not just ourselves. And so I have been doing that throughout my life in different ways. And where I am now is this incredible moment in my life of living here, leaving California officially this week, moving to Louisiana to really try to pull this off, what we're trying to do together, and what Jubilee Justice is all about. And we have 3 different areas that my work is about. Excuse me. So one of the things that I really believe is that Donella Meadows has a saying that says that the most effective way to make transformation is to actually transform the mindset that created the system that needs to be transformed by working on the mind, the heart mind. I say heart mind. And so there's a system that we all know that needs desperately to be transformed, that brings about the inequities that I've been speaking to, and many, many, many others, and the ones that you all know. And so in that, what came through me is this idea of doing journeys. And they're called learning journeys that I'll speak to in a minute. And the journeys are where we work cross-race, cross-class, cross-spiritual spirituality, and we come together to deal with each other, knowing that our complete freedom and liberation is tied together, cross-race, cross-class. So that's the journeys that I'll talk about. It's the heads and mind set of transformation, working with that. Then there's the Rice Project, which is right out my window. And I'll talk about that and why rice. And lastly, there's something called Potlikker Capital. And I will talk about that as well and what we're doing there. So basically, what we hope that we're achieving is a holistic approach that is our way. This is not the only way. There's so many people. Let me just say this. There are so many wonderful organizations doing amazing work in the sector, in the field, with justice and ag and land and race. So many wonderful organizations, and everybody's got their lane and what they're doing. And I'm just thrilled to be a part of that and to know these incredible bodhisattvas and who are doing this work. And this is the lane that I'm in, is the journeys, the Rice Project, and capital. So Jubilee Justice Journeys, and Roshi Jo mentioned land, race, money, and spirit. So that just came through one evening when I realized that the defining, in my estimation, the defining issues when I look at inequities from the very beginning of this country, when I look at inequities, when I look at our biggest issues that we as Americans are dealing with, it's around land, it's around race, and it's around money, and how that intersection works and doesn't work for some people. And spirit is just who we all are. And that's the place that we work from. And that is where my own background, my own Buddhist knowledge and heart space comes through by holding land, race, and money conversations from a place of spirit, understanding our interconnection, our deep interconnection, that all of us are deeply here together. And at the same time, we look these issues dead in the face We ask people who are interested, who have the courage to step into the space to talk about land, to talk about race, and to talk about money. We ask them to join us on these journeys, and they do. It's a beautiful, beautiful time that's happening right now. So Inglewood Plantation, that's where I am right now. 3,600 acres. It was a cotton plantation. My friends, the Keller family, who own this plantation now, they acquired it in 1927. But it has all the legacies and all the trappings of during slavery. And my dear friend, Elizabeth Keller, who is the president of the farm, is so committed to the healing of both the land and the people part of this plantation. She has been healing the land through certifying it organic and getting rid of all the toxins and all the pesticides. But she didn't know how she was going to work on the people side of things. She had no idea. She just prayed on it. And then somehow she and I met. And that's been the beginning of the transformation of Inglewood Plantation, the work that we're doing here. So we gather in groups. As I said, that's Elizabeth with the mic. We gather in groups of amazing individuals. It's the invitation of, like I said, cross race, cross class, cross spirituality. And we talk on a plantation about the roots of capitalism, the roots of race and land. Sitting, that is in, this photograph is taken in the big house on the plantation. And we walk the land together, and we spend time outside, and we come in and we go out and we come in, and we talk honestly. And it is transformational. It is transformational. And it's the deepest work I've ever done. And what is happening here is it's facilitated beautifully with a lot of heart. And there's no room for guilt and all of those kinds of emotions that do none of us any good. And yet we face the truth. It's truth-telling for all of us. And it's ancestral. We go back to our ancestors and we bring forth the messages. So this is one of the sessions here of one of our journeys. This was the day that Elizabeth had this place is on this plantation, this home. And she knows that it was formerly enslaved people lived here. And she could never deal with it. She could never go inside the building. The whole time she's been here, since 1927, she grew up coming here. She didn't grow up here exactly. She grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. But this was every summer of her life. And this was a home of formerly enslaved. And so we went there, this group of us. And we faced it with her. And we did ceremony. We did ceremony. You might notice or recognize a couple of people on the left. That's Brenda Salgado, who some of you may or may not know, who is an incredible healer. She's in Oakland. And to the far right is Reverend Angel. They were both with us on this particular journey and led the and led the ceremony. And that's cotton in the middle there. And it was a very interesting and transformational ceremony that we did that lifted the burden that Elizabeth had been carrying for all these years. And it's so interesting because it actually started to rain. It was a clear day and we made a circle and we started singing. And the next thing we know, rain came and washed away what needed to be washed away. And it was quite transformational. And for Elizabeth, it was what she really, really needed. This is a group shot of another one of the journeys that we did. And this is on the steps of the big house. And this is what we look like together. And we stay together. We have a cohort. This is our group and it expands. And some of you may know Louisa Tish is in the middle there standing. She is another spiritual leader from the Ifa religion. And she takes the lead now. She is our spiritual lead of the Jubilee Justice journeys. So we've got Buddhists, we've got Christians, we've got Ifa, we've got, you name it, Jewish, we've got everybody. And we come together with a lot of heart and intention to do this work together. So the journeys, as I said, are kind of they're the underpinning, they're the defining programs. I mean, if you talk nonprofit talk, is called a program. To me, it's not a program, it's life. And, but it's underneath everything because again, it's going to the heart of what are we here to do together? What has happened through the journeys? There's a lot of collaborations have happened. People who wouldn't know each other now do. The collaborations, the kinds of reparations that is happening, resources moving. It has been phenomenal. And that is the work that still goes on. We had to move online since COVID. And so we've been doing it online right now, but we're going to go back to in-person, hopefully, definitely. I hope, well, nothing's definite next year is the idea, but we have a beautiful project with all of us. And our goal right now is actually to work towards the elimination of the culture of white supremacy that is within each of us, no matter what color you are, and how by looking back and learning from our past and through storytelling and truth-telling. And so it's the creative side to the left brain, right brain working together is what we're working on right now. It's a beautiful project. And so the Rice Project is what I'm most known for, this Jubilee Justice. It's a beautiful, incredible project that came from the journeys, actually, that came out of the journeys and through an incredible collaboration that I have. But I want to talk a little bit about why rice, the American history of rice. So what you may or may not know is that Charleston, South Carolina was the wealthiest city in America in the 1700s due to rice. What happened is that there were, of course, as we know, hundreds of thousands of enslaved people, plus the Europeans here in America, and there was a lot of mouths to feed. When the Europeans went to West Africa, they saw rice cultivation. They saw the African rice cultivation. And as we've been speaking about corn, rice is our corn for African people. It's rice. And that is what we've cultivated. And that is what we grew and had interesting methods of doing that. And so the Europeans came to West Africa and they saw this rice cultivation and thought, So they intentionally enslaved rice growers, hundreds of thousands of them, and brought them to South Carolina, which was the first port. And in order to feed the masses of people that were coming to the New World. And so enslaved Africans were brought to South Carolina, and Charleston was the port and has been the actual home of rice in America, in early America. The Rice Museum is there. There's actually a rice museum that's just north of Charleston. So, and it was rough because we're looking at low country, which is, filled with alligators, swampy water, alligators, snakes, and what have you. But the Africans had to bring land. They moved tons and tons of land to fill in the swamps so that they could grow. Working around the alligators and the snakes, it was dreadful, dreadful work. And that's what they did. And they cultivated rice. And the truth is that at one point, Charleston was exporting over 100,000 pounds of rice a year to other parts of the country and to outside of the country. But the truth is that also Black folks who worked so hard for this rice culture, they never had the opportunity to benefit financially from it. And that is where our story begins with Jubilee Justice, because that's what we're changing, is that we're bringing back rice cultivation. Because after the emancipation, the Black folks left the plantations and walked away from the rice. They didn't want to have anything to do with it anymore. And they walked away from it. And the white Europeans did not know how to cultivate rice. And so the rice plantations died. And it was just like cotton. When we think of cotton, Black folks walked away from cotton, they walked away from rice as well. What we're doing is reclaiming rice, because it is, when you go back, I love what you said about the 20 years, Rebecca, I'm sorry, Roxanne, you talked about 20 years and it takes 20 generations. I think it was you, Roxanne, or maybe it was Wendy, about the 20 generations. And I love you saying that. I didn't know that number, but I do know that rice is the food that African people actually lived on. Was rice, was one of, and manioc, of course, there was manioc and other things, but rice was our grain. And so what we're doing is bringing it back. And this time with the folks who are growing the rice, benefiting from it. But we're not just bringing it back, because the other thing is that rice is not, it's not been good for the planet the way we grow rice. And so we're not just bringing back the old ways of growing it, but we're bringing back a new system that was developed in the 1980s in Madagascar off the coast of Africa, called the system of rice intensification, that is climate friendly. And so we're bringing that back. We're bringing back rice. We're introducing the system of rice intensification. And we're creating a cooperative for all the farmers. And we're building rice mills so that they actually own the rice mills. The cooperatives will own the rice mills, and cutting out the third party. So that's what the Rice Project is. Now, I said that we all, rice is our native food source. But remember, I told you that my family, we grew up at the border of Mexico and California. My grandmother, she made tamales. So corn was a big part of my diet, as well as I have here the collard greens representing the Black food that we ate, the Southern food. So I was one of these kids who was and I literally half and half, grew up half Mexican and with Mexican food as well as culture. So many things wrapped around that, as well as with the Black food. So I have my hat off to corn, and it's still a part of my diet every day. We use, in my family, corn tortillas like most people use bread. So I just wanted to shout out to corn and say, yes, indeed, I love it. And it is a part of my diet, a big part of my diet. But this is rice. And this is what it looks like. This is the beautiful, beautiful rice. Rice is so gorgeous, I think. And at this moment, we are cultivating over 30 varieties of rice at this moment on the farm that I'm on, 30 different varieties. And so what happened is that I made a collaboration that emerged. It wasn't I didn't make anything. It emerged, honestly. And it's a collaboration between Lotus Foods, which some of you, hopefully you know Lotus Foods, which is an incredible company that does rice, all products of rice, and they do it holistically and organically. And so it's a collaboration between Lotus Foods, who's the buyer of the rice that we're going to grow, and Cornell University. Cornell University are the people who are doing the technical assistance on the system of rice intensification. So just briefly, the system of rice intensification. So when you think of rice, you think of paddy rice, right? You think of water, you think of all this rice in the water. Well, one, there's too much water. Okay, the water use is just too much for our planet right now. And two, within that water are billions of microbes that off-gas methane. So rice, come to find out, I didn't know this, is one of the biggest emitters of methane in ag, next to, as we know, cows. And it's just hugely contributes to methane gases in our atmosphere. SRI, the system of rice intensification, does not use water like that at all. And the yield is higher, the input is less, and it's very climate friendly. And so it is a perfect combination of, with the yield being higher and the input is less, and it gets rid of all of the methane, most of the methane gas. So it is that beautiful intersection. And so what we have done, this collaboration is between Lotus Foods, Cornell University, and Jubilee Justice, bringing this to Black farmers in America to be in the forefront of this new way of growing rice. It's not new, but it's not happening in this country. Hundreds of thousands of farmers already around the world are using this method of rice, but not in the US. We are the first project in the US doing this. So it's an incredible collaboration between the three of us. This is what it looks like. That's Ariel, our 23-year-old who runs the project. She's amazing. And we plant rice like a plant, 12 inches apart, right into the soil as babies. And they grow stronger, bigger, and they have more tillers and panicles, which is where the rice comes from. That's what it looks like. And that's what our field looks like. Notice no water. That is my acre of rice right now.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And how much thicker, and like each one of those is one seed. So I'm using 90% less seed to do and yielding more. Right now, one of our farmers, Mr. Sanders, who's a rice farmer, he uses 90 pounds of seed per acre in his normal way of growing rice. Now, maybe it's a pound. It's a pound versus 90 pounds of seed. So the seeds go much further. This is what our rice field looks like. So, yeah, I know all about, threshing. We hand threshed, as Ariel and I, when we first harvested our first rice, we didn't have any equipment. We had that whole field that you just saw, and we were going to hand thresh it. And this is getting the rice off of the stalk. And so we just, this is old style hand threshing and standing on it, and with our bare feet. We winnowing it, cleaning it up with a big fan, This is how we were doing it until we started raising money and getting people to really support the project. And so now we have this thresher. And instead of beating it against the table, we put it into this machine and it comes out the other side. And this has helped us tremendously, this little thresher. And so this is how we're doing it right now. It still is labor intensive. You know, this is not big ag. This is not big ag. And so not only that, but I want to say is that it's also the way that we're growing it is that we are also sequestering carbon. We are no-till or low-till. We are absolutely working towards, we're working towards total no-till. We have cover crops. We are working towards completely getting all of our farmers off of the fabric, the plastic, and all of the pesticides. And so that is what our job is. And also, as I said, we have bought one rice mill that is here in Louisiana. We'll buy another one that we're setting up, that we'll set up in South Carolina. And hopefully we plan on being in California. But it's the first time that Black folks have owned a rice mill, that they own themselves, and that they actually will be able to participate in the upside. And we're talking beautiful rice. We're talking Black rices and red rices and basmati rices and rices that are boreos and rices that are specialty rices that Lotus Foods, if you know them, that they sell. So we have beautiful rice that we're doing. And I just want to introduce you to the farmers. That's Mr. Sanders and his son. They were our first farmers. They're in Mississippi, Mount Bayou, Mississippi. Mr. Sanders made 13 cents a pound per rice for his rice, 13 cents a pound. And then the middleman comes in with the mill and takes all the money and sells it for $85 a pound. And now that he's going to be a cooperative owner of the mill with other rice farmers, they will participate in that upside. In the middle is Miss Shirley Sherrod, who I introduced you to earlier with New Communities. She now has 1,600 acres. She lost that 6,000, but now she's got 1,600 in Albany, Georgia, and she is a part of the Rice Project. And that's Kali to her on the other side of her, who works with her. So they are now a part of the Rice Project. So we are in partnership with New Communities, and I couldn't be happier. Again, these are more of our farmers. Mr. Freeman on the left, and you see the ages, you know, from all ages. And we've got them in South Carolina, in Georgia, and Mississippi. These are our farmers who are now doing rice. And we've got in the young man on the left is a pig farmer who's now doing rice in South Carolina. The woman in the middle is amazing. She's in Louisiana. She's doing it, and Mr. White on the right there. So, and these two, all of them are doing rice. Mr. Gregory in Mississippi, and on the right side is in the Low Country in St. Helena Island, the greens. I got the whites and the greens and all kinds of colors. And so in addition to that, I mentioned that we have Potlikker Capital. So Potlikker, I don't know if y'all know what Potlikker is. Potlikker, I grew up with Potlikker. And as I grew up with collard greens as a main staple food for us, there's something that's called Potlikker. And for those of you who don't know, when you cook a mess of greens, whether it's collards or any other kind of green, the juice that is at the bottom of the pot is called Potlikker. And it has all the nutrients in it. I think of it as for what chicken soup is. It's like our chicken soup, right? It builds strong bones. You're told by your parents, by your mother, when she gives you your greens, you get a cup of Potlikker that goes with it. You drink your Potlikker and you're going to be healthy and strong. So that's the story that I was raised with, and I'm sticking to it. So I decided to call this capital, this fund, Potlikker, to help us grow strong, in our bones. So it's called Potlikker Capital. And Potlikker Capital is it's a charitable loan fund, which means it's a nonprofit. And it's established specifically to deploy what we call reparative capital, repairing the harm that has happened from the USDA and the banks that I spoke of earlier, to support BIPOC-owned regenerative farming businesses. And not just Black-owned, but BIPOC, because even our rice project right now, we're focusing on Black farmers, and we are expanding next to Indigenous farmers. And we've got our first group of Indigenous farmers, it looks like, coming in. And so we are doing reparative capital to repair the harm that has happened. And that is what this fund is. And that is what, and so that's my partner, Mark Watson, on the right there, talking to Mr. Sanders. He is a finance guy who has worked in Wall Street and knows all how they do it all, how it all works. And he has taken all that knowledge and flipped it upside down and is using it to help Black and brown farmers. And so any of you out there who are connected to Black and brown farmers, who want any assistance around any of the work that Mark is just brilliant. He knows he knows how capitalism works, and he knows how to make it work for us and to flip it. So that is what Potlikker Capital is doing. And we are the collateral that I mentioned, that Black farmers have been asked 5 times more collateral with their houses on Hawk and their farms. We're replacing that with philanthropic capital. We're replacing it and getting their farms off Hawk, getting their houses off Hawk. We're refinancing these high, crazy interest loan, double-digit loans. We're giving them grants, and then very low loans, 0 to 2%. So that is what Potlikker Capital is doing. So what we have is a situation where we have, on one side, we have the rice project. We have the technical assistance on how to do this rice. We have this market opportunity with Lotus Foods, and claiming back the heritage of rice for Black farmers. And on the other side, we have the reparative capital, the below market rates. We have philanthropic capital. We have grants. We have access to support and policy. And so what we're doing is a holistic approach to help farmers. And that's what our story is right now. And we're 2 years old, and we're out the door. I can tell you right now that there are so many wonderful people who hear what we're doing, who are stepping up and saying, yes, I want to be a part of this. So resources are flowing, and I'm very grateful. This is the team. This is the beautiful team that does the journeys, that does the capital, that does the rice project. These are the people that I wake up every morning giving gratitude that they are in my lives, who are doing the deep work, and that I am very, very fortunate to know and be a part of their passion as well. That's my story.
Wow, Konda, thank you so much, both for sharing your story, but also, introducing us to this really remarkable vision. I want to invite Wendy, if she would just share a few words about your reflection on what Konda's doing.
Well, it is absolutely overwhelming and moving beyond measure to see this work. So 2 years old, what an extraordinary little fiery being, and on every level, very much as we felt listening to Roxanne, the incorporation of culture and art and wisdom and really good ancient practices, but also revitalizing rice through farming. I'm just astonished at the productivity of the field, a single rice seedling opening up a whole field like that. I'm really back there in that 1 acre, and you threshing out the rice. This is extraordinary. And partnership at every level. Konda, this is just practice on the front lines.
Thank you.
Do you sleep? Do you sleep a little bit now and then?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not big on sleep. I'm trying to do more. I'm trying to do more.
Yeah.
And I just moved. So that was the last 2 weeks I've been in California, just like moving my entire house. And anyway.
And
So
have you been, we've been worrying about you with all the flooding. How are you doing with all of the environmental
yeah,
challenges in
the
Louisiana? Just
environment
bring us up to
is,
date a little bit about that.
yeah, the environmental challenges are real, and that is why, again, it's like the work that we're doing is working towards climate, right? And so that the more people who are growing rice the way that we're doing it, the more we're going to, sequester the carbon and help climate chaos that's happening. And it's real. So luckily, we do have a crop that likes
Water.
water. It
It has
doesn't
the
love
each
water, though.
memory.
But the truth of it is that it doesn't love water. People think
Yeah.
it does. It doesn't love water. It just is resilient to water. But getting
Mm.
out into the field is really hard. So as soon as the days come, we get out into the field. We had a huge last year Hurricane Laura. I came right before Hurricane Laura, and I
Oh my
thought, oh my
Lord.
God! And we had planted. We went out after the hurricane, and all of our rice was just leaning, but
Mm-mm.
none of it came up. And every other rice farmer around here lost their entire field.
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
Well, a
So
testimony to good roots and careful planting.
yeah.
May I ask just a gardening question? How do you start the rice seedlings? Because that's a lot of, you're not direct seeding it looks like. You're
No,
planting in seedling.
that's right. Well, here on Inglewood, we're the laboratory. And so, like I said, we have 23 varieties. We do everything. We do direct seeding. We do seedlings.
Right.
And the truth is that the seedlings, we lost more, from the seedling from doing it. So direct planting, I mean, not direct. From direct planting, we lost more. Seedlings are absolutely the best way.
Absolutely.
We're building a greenhouse, and have we've been borrowing a greenhouse, and now we have the funds to build a greenhouse. So we're literally building a greenhouse. We have a hoop house that we've turned into a greenhouse, so
Right.
to speak. And so that's where we're doing the seedlings.
And would you mind just giving us a rundown on when do you seed, when do you plant, when do you harvest? Just so we know in the year. So sorry,
Well,
everyone, but this is the real
yeah.
work. We need to know this.
It's not what it should be, honestly, Wendy, because of climate. What we should be doing is planting, is doing our seedlings and planting around March.
Mm.
We couldn't get into the field until May.
Because it's wet.
It was too wet. We couldn't get in
Yeah.
the field until May. Some people, we still are getting in the field in June.
Oh, my heavens.
Yeah. So it's being pushed. It's being pushed. And so we harvest, typically we're supposed to harvest around July, August. It's now September. So it's all being pushed.
Yeah.
And but luckily we're in, there's also something called retuning that rice can do, which means that you can if you get in early enough, if you plant early enough and you harvest early enough, you leave the stubble, and with the stubble, it can grow again. It can retune.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
So
Very similar to wheat and some of the and some
Yes,
corn. Even some corn is being
that's right.
grown this
And
way now. So
what we're also doing is that we're obviously you can't just do one crop. And so our rotation crops are peas, and of course, they're nitrogen fixers as well. So we're doing a lot of like the cowpeas, the black eyed peas, again, a
nice.
part of the diet,
Nice.
the black diet, right? We're doing wheat.
Yes.
We have 50 something wheat trials right now in
My
that.
Lord. My Lord.
Yeah. And then, but the good thing is that the rice stubble that's left is also mulch. It's very good mulch. So we keep all the stubble for mulch.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. A perfect, Konda, it's such a beautiful example of mitigating the damage that's been done on every level, and then really adapting, bringing in this new rice, and in partnership with Lotus Foods and with Cornell, and then the extraordinary resilience of rice people dream all together. It's overwhelmingly just so moving to hear what you're doing.
I really hope you all know Lotus Foods. If you don't, please do look up for them on the shelf.
If you don't, yum, yum, yum.
It's beautiful rice, just beautiful rice.
And are you sharing the rice seed with other farmers as well?
Oh, yes.
Obviously, it's delicious to sell and eat. Yeah.
Our first whole year, that whole year, it's just been seed production. We're just doing seed production. We're not milling anything. And all
Yeah.
of the rice that we're giving to all of our farmers, we give them all the seeds, and then we have them seed production. Everybody have a little part to do seed production, but we're looking at, it looks like one of the businesses we're going to get into is going to be rice seed production. So
Beautiful.
yeah, seed saving is just like, at the heart of what we're
And
doing as
we
well.
see you so young and so old in the business, so young and so old, not turning away from the old ways, from knowledge, from really being a knowledge keeper and a knowledge revival happening. And then also so young and adaptive and flexible and very, very moving, very moving. May I ask how meditation has been helping you? Just fill us in a little bit, just what your practice is and how it's been,
So, you know, I've been connected to Spirit Rock. I'm Theravada trained, and I just completed the Jack Cornfield,
yes,
the last teacher training. So I've been teaching, but I never went through the training officially. So now I'm official. So
right.
that's cool. And my practice is just my daily practice. I mean, and I, you know, in between all of this, I'm also doing retreats and, you know, things like that. And I teach still, and I'm working with Jack and Tara Brock right now, and they have a
Beautiful.
training and MTCP program, and I'm one of their people that's working that program. So I've got, and my own practice is just a daily practice of meditation, and also bringing it into the field with my, you know, with my team. You know, starting all of our meetings always with meditation, bringing them into the space, and always talking about the sacred work, that this is
Right.
sacred work, and the sacred work that we're doing. And these are young people who don't, you know, I'm hiring this local people who have not been given a chance to do anything
Right.
much at all here in
Yeah.
Louisiana. It's very different than California. And yeah, so I'm bringing in a lot of new stuff, and, you know, step at a time.
Beautiful that you chose the word journeys, that you really see it as a journey, as a real homecoming, or pardon me, I don't want to add any language to your language. It's just been
Yeah.
such an extraordinary afternoon to be with you in Louisiana. And do you intend now to stay in the South? Is that your hope? You're not
I'm
commuting
here.
back and forth.
I'm
Yeah.
here. I'm done. They're building me a home. The Kellers are building me and my sister, who's with me, a home right here. So I'm going to be living, not only that I had never
But
been to a plantation, but now I'm going to be living on a plantation like my home. So they're building us a home here because, as I started to say, that Elizabeth didn't know what to do on the social side, but the Jubilee Justice Project is like, it is so dear to her. It means everything. And so she's just supporting in every way. And she's like, right now, I literally am living in her house. And I've been here for the last year. And she's like, okay, we're going to build you all a house. And so she's building my sister and I a home, right? I see it from here. And yeah, I've moved lock, stock, and barrel. I'm here. This is home now.
beautiful,
Mm.
beautiful.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
I'm sorry, Roshi, I just kept muscling in. Please, I'm stepping
No,
back
no,
now.
no.
It went so long. I'm so
I'm
sorry.
so happy, you know.
Well,
Wendy, I appreciate you muscling in every time. And, you know,
Right.
one of the things that I think that those of us who are bearing witness to this incredible day is to see the vitality, the persistence, in a way, the take no prisoners, just straight ahead, forward, you know, with this vision and this mission around equity, land, money, spirit, race. It's just really powerful. And I'm so thrilled, Konda, for what you've shared with us today. Really, it's a piece of the picture that is not well known.
Yeah.
And you're bringing it into focus for so many of us. So thank you with all my heart.
Thank you for inviting me. I really am so happy to be here. I see a couple of questions that I can quickly answer.
Yeah.
It's okay. The need for water, what do we do? That's a good question. When there is no water, right now we do have a well. So we have a well and we get water from the well. And so that's what we do for that. And so, but as you see, it's not sitting in water. It's just, and we
Right.
put it in the furrows so that
Right.
the plant reaches for the water. My favorite variety of rice is without a doubt the red rice, the scarlet.
Right.
It is so divine. And the parish that we're in, I never say it correctly, but I say Rapides Parish or Rapides Parish. I'm still learning Southern talk. Lord have mercy. I'll start saying y'all too. I've been saying y'all. Do you have volunteers? We have some volunteers who have shown up recently, and we are during harvest time. We need volunteers because, again, it is labor intensive. One of the things we're trying to do, because a lot of our farmers, as you see, are older, we have to come in with groups of people to help, and we're looking how to mechanize it in a way that is affordable and that makes sense for small plots. And the way that we have found the best equipment is the Japanese. Japanese, they use they're small landholders, right? 10 acres is the biggest. And so not like these big combines that are just ridiculous. And so they have made equipment that is for small plots. And so I have my eye on some equipment in Japan. The problem is that with COVID, there's no transportation across the ocean right now. But I'm looking to get some equipment from Japan that I'm going to test out, see if it works for us. And if so, then we'll start trying to bring some of that equipment in. What challenges have you encountered? How to practice supporting the cooperative economic? Yeah. Community. Oh, the community. We call it communities of practice. So what we do is we find our farmers that are close geographically to each other so that they get to know each other. We introduce them. They start talking about more than just rice, of course, the watermelons or their okra or whatever else is they're growing. And so we get them to know each other, and farmers just like to talk. They're so separated. And but then as soon as you put them together, like kids, like, oh, they know each other. And so they want to talk. And so we have these intentional field days, and we have field days. We go to each other's farms and they get to know each other. We have them on Zoom, or most of them are not on Zoom. Our conversations are on phone. A lot of the farmers are not even online, but so we have field days and things like that. And so the community is getting together. And so South Carolina is its own community. Mississippi Valley and where I'm in Mississippi Valley, the Mississippi Delta, and Louisiana is another kind of in Arkansas. Arkansas is actually the home of rice in America now. It's Arkansas.
Very interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. John Cummings.
Interesting.
No, I don't know him. Please introduce me. I am not keeping a journal. To your project. You know what? I don't look at threats. I don't even think about that. I'm just plotting ahead, doing the work, and not thinking about who might be wanting to sabotage. Wish them well.
Just to return, because of coming from a meditation tradition grounded in Japan, appreciation for what you mentioned, for small farming, for maneuverable farming, for farming, as they say, tekkai farming, with farming with food with a farmer's face on it. And it does really feel that your farming is tekkai farming with the face of this beautiful project front and center. And
Thank you.
that's no anonymous food at any moment. I can imagine you having feasts in the fields eventually, big pots of rice and pot liquor to drink, and dances to do and celebrations to, and I'm definitely feeling that this afternoon listening, just extraordinary.
That's so
joy.
sweet. I've been listening to you all this morning. I was like, oh, my story is just so not like, I was feeling like, how am I going to work into this? You all were just so inspiring. And I'm just happy that it didn't fall flat because I thought,
No. Okay. Well, this is like a celebration, but I think we also need just a little bit of a break before Stephanie opens up another perspective on what we're exploring today, and that's whole systems thinking for restorative healing. And I'm looking at responding to systems of suffering that damage soils, cultures, and people, and how we restore, how we decolonize, how we grow equity together. So, Konda, thank you so much. And it is 3:15. I'd like us to return at 3:25. We'll take a 10-minute break. Okay. See you soon, everybody.
Okay. Bye.
Beautiful.
Look at you. God.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hi,
So good to
Joan,
see you.
Joan.
Oh, I'm really, really happy to see you. I'm, you know, there's the miracle of Zoom that we can not have such a radical carbon footprint in making this happen, you know, bringing such extraordinary women together from different parts of the country. And by the same token, both you and I know the value of this warm hand to warm hand relationship, you know, where we're sort of, our eyebrows are all tangled in each other. And I look forward to the time when I see you not in the digital format. But in the meantime, one of the things that you said in your little bio was that you were a lover of trees. And one of the things that I always associate with you, Stephanie, is how deep your roots go and how vast the crown of your understanding is. And I just thank you for your many years of Buddhist practice, of Zen Buddhist practice, and also, you know, being in the academic world. I don't know if everybody knows that, but Stephanie is a professor emeritus in the Rubenstein School of Environment and Natural Resources at the University of Vermont, and has written such important books in the field of environment. But, you know, all of your books have this vision of deep ecology, which is something that I think has touched so many lives, you know, at this time when we're bringing forth another vision of what it is to relate deeply to this earth, to the land, to the waters, as we're in the middle of this, or probably at the beginning in a more depressive way of this climate catastrophe. And your books explore such important questions that relate to climate and to sustainability and what we're in the midst of at this time. So thank you. And I know our time is a little bit fluid, but don't let, you know, the clock deter you. So please, we're on a special kind of time with each other. And thank you for being here.
Thank you, of course, Roshi. Thank you for the invitation, for the honor, for the delight, for the privilege to be lifted up by the company of all that are on this call and the speakers especially. I, like you, went outside during the break and laid down in the garden near the path, just thinking, clear the path in this time of just incredible uncertainty and emergence. We are all kind of slowly and carefully trying to come out and see what this post-COVID, if it is post, new normal, if it's normal at all, is going to look like. And as we try to find our way, I'm sure we're going to all stumble a lot, but I think we'll be holding each other's hands. And so I'm very grateful today to be feeling that I'm holding hands with all of you. Right up front, I have to say, I am not a farmer. I am more of a tree lover. You should see the size of the apple tree in my yard, but I have a great affinity and I've been well taught by, and I like to listen to those who are really gardening. So bit by bit, I get a little bit better. So this forum, I'm not sure if people realize how unusual it is to bring together a farming and gardening and agriculture, agroecology, permaculture perspective with the word justice. This is a new conversation in a broader scheme of things. So I felt kind of challenged to see if I could understand a little bit of what it is and offer something to you today. So let me just add to that gratitude of being here as I begin just to our beloved earth. and to all our beautiful relations, trees, of course, ocean, the great mountains and rivers, and the many plant, animal, fungal beings of every shape and form. So I am also going to share my screen and many images here that I hope will be evocative if the words are forgotten. Something here will be a gift across the day. So hold on one sec, we'll get this big scale for you. So I decided that one thing I might be able to offer is some kind of a moral framework, some way to put all these pieces into a way to think about it. And I'll give you a clue here in the beginning that, as you may have noticed already today, there are a lot of R words that seem to be affiliated with this territory we're circling around. So I've picked a few of those, and I think they might open some fruitful areas for discussion. But let me begin with just grounding. We've heard other land acknowledgement statements. And so in terms of human time, I am speaking to you from the Pacific Northwest, near the confluence of the Willamette and Columbia Rivers, whose lush valleys were carved out by Ice Age floods and then peopled with amazing trees and cultures. So I would like to honor the Native people here as both ancestors and also survivors of this place. And on this land, it's the Multnomah, Clackamas, Clawiwala, and Cascades or Watlala bands of the Chinookan peoples and the Tualatin band of the Kalapuya. Many Native tribes still here in this part of the world. But I also wanted to add more grounding besides that land acknowledgement, the land that's even deeper below us, the deep ecology understanding of grounding in geologic time. Here where I'm located is a very moving story, we should say. Just off the coast is the Cascadia subduction zone with plates crashing into each other and the expectation that there could be a significant earthquake at any time. I am living in the Ring of Fire. And also I thought for the purposes of today, I should claim my own heritage and place. I am a third generation from Hungarian immigrants who came over not that long ago to this country and joined other Hungarians in Cleveland on my father's side. And on my mother's side, I've now learned by the genealogists in my family that our lineage goes way back on this continent to some of the early ships that arrived. And among the people in that lineage, though I couldn't tell you exactly which generation and exactly where, were Southern plantation owners that owned slaves. So this is something for me to learn about. But where I am located right now is in a complex of mountain ranges, plateaus, desert, and waterlands, beautiful rivers in this area, and a complicated set of smashed up rocks against each other. Klamath Mountains, the Cascades, the Rockies. It's a beautiful place to challenge one's understanding of the deeper ground below. But as Roshi Joan mentioned, I spent time at University of Vermont, which is a land grant college. That means it was the university in the state of Vermont that was tasked with taking care of agricultural concerns in that state and doing the learning and the teaching and the research to understand what one could grow in the state of Vermont. But I was located in environmental studies in an interdisciplinary program where we got to think about this sort of thing using science, social science, humanities, and global perspectives. That said, I think this photo gives you a good sense of that New England feeling. The very, very white state that I was in, of Vermont, Maine and Vermont, the whitest states in the Union. In my mind, that was a certain amount of impoverishment. And I am really, really grateful to be back on the West Coast, where there's many more streams of thought. So I will also just acknowledge the Dharma teachers that have strongly influenced me, my lay ordination teacher, Kobenchino Otogawa, Thich Nhat Hanh, as Wendy has mentioned, and of course, Joanna Macy, and a book I've just been working on with her is just out, and Roshi Joan wrote the most beautiful foreword. Look for it in the stores in a couple of weeks, her 30th anniversary edition of World as Lover, World as Self. Many others, of course, Robert Aiken, John Dido Laurie, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So given that grounding, I hope that will give me enough energy and perspective to even take up this common challenge we face. We've been alluding to it across the day, but at the foundation, it is that food justice, race justice, and climate justice are interlinked. They're interlinked struggles, and they will have interlinked solutions. So we might ask today, what are there common drivers? Are there overlapping goals? And especially, I want to ask moral and ethical questions with the point, what is the role for awakened action? That is a phrase we've been using in the socially engaged Buddhist training, awakened action. And just to echo some of what's been brought up, under climate change, farmlands are particularly vulnerable to widespread floods, as well as multi-year droughts. And in California, they're even also threatened by wildfire. But in addition, they have been threatened by land grabs, betrayals, false treaties, inequitable policies, cultural destruction, and racist laws. And a tremendous amount of farmland has been lost to these kinds of cruel and unjust events and policies. And we heard one strong story from that from Konda. Food economies are vulnerable to the whims of the global trade system and of the policies of changing presidential administrations. There are also, of course, many factors outside of their influence, climate being one of them. And the food ways that have been associated with food cultures, whether it's Black culture, Hispanic culture, Indigenous culture, and all the other cultures that know of their own foods, have often been undermined by extractive economies where everything is taken from the land. And then the habitat is lost that supports the wider ecosystem. And usually that's under corporate control of capitalism, the money-making, profit-generating economy that is dominant right now in this world. I offer up a photo here of a particularly painful place in my landscape, Celilo Falls, which was the hub of culture and trading for the indigenous tribes here, a place where the Columbia River had some major boulder falls that generated wonderful fishing spot with the waterfalls. And you can see their native methods of fishing with nets out into the waters for just an unbelievable abundance of salmon. And this has all been flooded, with the Bonneville Dam generating hydroelectric energy. So when I say extinction, I mean tragic extinction in some cases. This is still a source of tears for all the local tribes. So the question again that Roshi Joan posed, how do we grow justice and culture in regenerating soil and human health? It's a really big question. And I am humbled by it, and by no means an expert, and by no means offering you all that's out there. I'm thrilled that it's such a developing conversation. And it includes such things as equity in the opportunity to produce food, as Konda's wonderful example, and equity in healthcare based on good nutrition, as in Roxanne's wonderful story. And somehow regaining access to cultural legacy foods, growing them, finding them, researching them. And then over time, building the depth of relationship and trust that will build these soils and build these human communities. So there's so much here. There's so much new thinking on the front lines. If you feel a sense of excitement among the other speakers, it's because so much is emerging right now. And it feels really quite hopeful how interlinked this conversation is. And here's just one beautiful picture I found on the web, High Hog Farm in Grayson, Georgia, where they're doing animal agriculture. So I wanted to take up that common challenge by asking the question of how to find a moral compass. How do we find that path? How do we clear the path and see how to take next steps forward? Is there anything in common that we might learn about together? And somehow Reverend Barber came to mind. I am so moved by him, one of the most powerful Christian speakers right now. His Poor People's Campaign has been such a model. And look at that motto, a call for moral revival. He will shake you out of your chair. So I look to people like Reverend Barber for a moral path of justice that can heal the planet. I'm well aware that I live in a Judeo-Christian world, and that contains a prophetic tradition where you raise your hand and fist to the skies and call for justice. The Buddhists don't have that same kind of style, and we're a little quieter about these things. So we make good allies together. So Reverend Barber, if you don't mind, I'm calling on you as an ally today, and I really appreciate your work. So what we're looking at is an extractive, not just economy, but mind, the extractive colonizing mind that dominates pretty much every aspect of the planet now. And we can feel that this right now, the need is so deep for course correction, turning the ship, somehow righting what seems to be going wrong. And in every direction, realization is emerging that we are all linked in common survival. So back to my question of how can this work, this finding a moral compass, be liberating, be awakened action, to use Buddhist terms? How can we see what we're in the midst of as karmic weights that are interwoven and binding threads, so that that tangle becomes a tangle we can untangle and together and be liberated in the development of awareness. This is all with the goal of alleviating suffering, a basic Buddhist vow at all levels and in all systems that reinforce that suffering. So I suggest that we draw on a moral compass of witness and reckoning. And as you know, in the Zen peacemakers tradition, witness is one of the three key tenets. But reckoning has a kind of prophetic call to it, a sense that if we don't reckon with our history and the karma on the land, we will continue to perpetuate some of the tragedies that are harming so much of the land and the people that live here. And all this is in a call to deal with our climate chaos, our climate crisis. What I read in one author's writing is a need for a cultural climate change, that climate change itself is a moral issue. So here's my beginning thoughts on this. I said I was bumping into R's everywhere, and these are the ones that seemed to have the strongest call to me. I'd be so interested in your reflections. This is kind of brand new thinking to me to put this together and call it practices for a just future. So it's really an idea. It needs testing, it needs trying out, but the pieces are all being emerging and being manifest in many different ways right now. And it's really quite thrilling. So just to pause for a moment, like the Buddha here, and look at these words, just to look at them. Recognition, beginning by bearing witness, by doing the reckoning and seeing what is really wrong. And this includes studying our own participation. As I said, I have some work to do myself. Just as an example, what is that slaveholding background that's in my lineage? Studying the self as well as the situations we see. taking responsibility, becoming really grown up about it, including everything, not just the parts that are easy, but really including the next generations and the 7 or 10 or 20 generations to follow. And then third, making reparations, the reparative modes that Konda spoke of. Restitution is another word. They're being used together about making things right, where it just feels bad. It's been so wrong in some cases. Let's find the way to make things right. And then we will be in a good position to start the restoration and process and build back resilience. There won't be leftover karmic shame on the landscape. We can actually make something good happen in turning that ship and bringing back health to the land and to the human communities that live there. And what this really will generate, I hope, and call for and manifest is a paradigm shift that I want to call remembering, becoming a member again of this living web of life, thinking of oneself as a member, truly, not just someone who takes resources, but is a relative in right relationship with all other beings. Well, let's go through these 5 R's a little bit, and I'll show you at least my explorations of what might be involved, because some of this is hard work, and maybe some of it will be homework for you. There's a lot of springboards here to learn about. So recognition, facing into the karma of suffering on the land with courage, with determination, with virya, effort, and turning toward the reckoning, as Wendy said, with such fierceness. Now really is the time to hold to our steady practice space with that awakening mind, and then begin to expose the buried stories, the hidden or erased narratives, and the history makers who have benefited from erasing those narratives. I thought these Australians had it pretty well nailed in their banner, "Killing the planet is against our religion." And I would imagine most of us agree with that. But here are some very specific reckonings I think we need to do. First, we have an economy and a culture with a long legacy of dominating thinking and dualistic thought. There's always the black and the white, the nature spirit, the good guys, the bad guys, way back through the Greeks, the Catholics, and in Western science, and in our code of laws, and very specifically was codified when this continent had contact from the West. So I just want to be sure you know about the doctrine of discovery. This is something to reckon with. This doctrine was formalized in the 13th and 14th centuries by the Catholic papal authorities, and it very clearly called out that the entire world was under the jurisdiction of the Pope, the entire world, because the Pope was God's representative on earth. So any land that was not Christianized, in other words, not under the sovereignty of a Christian ruler, could be possessed on behalf of God. That basic doctrine justified genocide of those who were not Christian because they were seen as not human. And in fact, this doctrine of discovery, it's quite horrifying when you read the detailed wording on it. It's long, but it definitely justified rape and other forms of violence, enslavement, and murder, all to Christianize the continent. At that time, under these doctrines, the second really important one is the doctrine of terra nullius, because all time and space was considered empty until Christians arrived with God's truth. The land didn't belong to anyone. It was empty of people with any rights to it. So clearly the native people already living on those lands were not seen as people. Native people trace these genocides to these critical doctrines, and these are not old pieces of paper. They are the basis of our legal system in the United States, and they're still being used in some of the Supreme Court decisions that are being handed down. It is our responsibility to understand what's in these doctrines. So, of course, these were easily applied to plantation economies, and slaveholder domination was rationalized with the enslaved being property. Now, we also have some serious reckoning to do with the impacts of settler colonization and of being settler people. Studying the impacts not just on Native peoples and enslaved peoples, but on the land itself. This is systems study, putting the links together under the label of extraction. The extraction economy took land from Indians, this kind of horrifying poster here. Indian land for sale, just take it. Possession within 30 days. Or the extraction of the trees, this horrific heartbreak for me of the most amazing belt of conifers on the planet that was stripped by the extraction economy and the settler colonization. So we need to do, as part of that reckoning, to call out who gained benefit from it and what those benefits were, and stop invisibilizing them. They accrued to those who had land, and they were taken away by taking away the land of the people who had it before, either the Native peoples or the Black people. So there are many repeating patterns here and many rationalized moral transgressions to learn about. So reckoning with this karmic legacy of harm includes understanding how it's intergenerational. There are people writing now about intergenerational trauma, griefs that are passed on from one generation to the next, the losses of land, of culture, of foodways, that then seem to bring about other debilitating health conditions or justification of cruelty among human beings. This is something we can learn about. Disruption also of the cultural systems that lasted for many years that promoted well-being, reclaiming those, bringing them back. What is that karmic legacy of harm? The loss of languages, the suppression of cultures and language, and then this grief that so much cruelty happened here on this land, I will say, of North America, though there are other stories on other continents. There are many harms on Africa, all of this civilization of Europe, also displaced indigenous peoples and involved enslaved and impoverished peoples. It's a human pattern worldwide. Melissa Nelson, one of the Native scholars that actually was in, that Wendy has worked closely with, that she mentioned with the Cultural Conservancy work. Here's a couple sentences from her. On the edge of many precipices, we are living in prophetic times where the gifts of the ancestors are revealing possibilities for pathways forward. But the path forward can only be traversed after reckoning with the past. This is something I would say in white supremacy culture, we are not very good at. We would rather move on and conquer the next piece of land or planet or ocean than really reckon with the impacts of all the colonization and conquest and extraction of the past. So the reckoning part is hard work, and I applaud all those who are bravely doing it, and we each have our own stories to explore and our own stories on the land where we are to understand what happened here, what happened here. The second R, responsibility, is also hard work. It involves deconstructing some of those privileges, really taking apart what those impacts have been and learning the history and not turning away from it, and understanding the numbers and the loss of species and the loss of farmland, and starting to map out the links between domination and colonization with extraction and consumerism, that we are living in a consumer economy where mostly we're not very connected to the land, most of us consumers, particularly in urban areas. And we have no idea, really, of the links in the history. So fortunately, there is more and more quite moral, responsible work going on to trace those links with, say, fish or grains or animal agriculture. We're learning. It's hard learning, but then we can begin to see what our personal role is and take more responsibility in our choices. But these things are built deep into the system: banking and finance, subsidies, all the technological and infrastructure capacity. You know, really, where do farmers get online? It's the really, really big corporate farms. They, you can believe, are watching the global trading all the time online. So the big farms benefit from peer and cultural support. And I have to say, one of the things touched me most in Konda's story was hearing about farmers talking to each other and forming that peer support. Also becoming responsible to others in our communities. I loved learning that some group of indigenous leaders are calling on the Pope to replace that doctrine of discovery with the doctrine of recovery. That is an extremely bold move. If they can get any traction with that, we all need to support that and see what might be taken apart by that undoing of that destructive foundation to all that happened on this continent. Becoming responsible by honoring the diverse traditional ecological knowledges of places and people. I've learned how important that S is, traditional ecological knowledges. There is no single knowledge, because each knowledge, as Roxanne so clearly explained to us, is built in place over many generations. And the knowledge of the Pueblo people is not going to be the same of the salmon fishing Chinooks up here, where I am in the Northwest. And if that knowledge is to be responsibly saved and used, it has to be transferred between generations. And just reclaiming that sense of responsibility is a big job. And that too is starting to happen. And you seeing the young people. I found that there was this Native Youth and Food and Agricultural Leadership Summit, and those beautiful faces of young Native people learning to farm and regain this knowledge across the generations. And for those who maybe want to help, but aren't on those frontline communities or aren't even growing food or living your food, they can learn how to be a responsible ally. But it means deconstructing some of the romantic delusions that protect us from seeing what really is there. We can't have noble savage images, or that natives have all the answers. There's a lot of myths and stereotypes that need to be taken apart. And here's another Native scholar I highly recommend to you, just beautiful thinker. Determining what exactly needs to be done will involve the kind of creativity that Indigenous peoples have used to already survive some of the most oppressive forms of capitalist, industrial, and colonial domination. But above all, it will require that allies take responsibility and confront the assumptions behind their actions and aspirations. This is a real call out to really check what your thinking is. So one way to take that responsibility is to stand alongside others and, make a kind of solidarity together. That's a kind of community building. And one of the people in my socially engaged Buddhist group is working in Canada on the Stop Ecocide Canada site. And the stories she's been telling are so moving, that their goal is to make ecocide an international crime. What a karmic writing to call it out and say, this is not okay. We have to call it a crime. We can stand in solidarity with the water protectors. This is something Wendy did herself. She went to Standing Rock. One of the most moving stories I loved hearing about. And now this is happening in Minnesota. Stand with the seed protectors. I couldn't not have some acorns in this slideshow. The soil protectors. And right now, I want to draw your attention to what's happening. June 5th, the Treaty People Gathering. This is up in Minneapolis, the Action to Stop Pipeline 3. Winona LaDuke is one of the people who's so articulate about this. You can hear from her on their website. And the slogan is, "We are all treaty people." That is a responsibility to uphold both sides of the treaty breakers with the treaty signers. So I just put a couple of screenshots here of the partners that are supporting this amazing solidarity action taking place right now with the air and climate protectors and the culture protectors. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of networks and organizations and religious groups meeting up there today. I know there's a delegation of I think it's over 1,000 Unitarians that are there. I heard about a Jewish delegation. Will be reading about this over the next few days. Very, very thrilling. So hold them in solidarity in your heart. Right, number 3, making things right. Restitution, reparations, cleaning up the wrongs on the land, holding ceremonies, cleaning them, getting the toxins out of our souls and off the soil. So I just bring up the basic Buddhist precepts. They give us everything we need from a Buddhist perspective. Not harming. Where is the harm? How do we make restitution? How do we bring compassionate protection of life back? Where has there been harm from not taking what was not given? In other words, stolen land, stolen seed. How do we reverse that? How about abusive relations? There's maps of those all over the country. Find a place and cultivate respect for love. Not speaking falsely is about many of the delusions and stereotypes and myths that have been perpetuated that keep denial in place and prevent reparations from happening. You can listen on the congressional floors and all those same arguments will be there against this cleaning up. To get there, we really need discernment and clarity, and we can't be intoxicated by delusion. So the Han board there at Upaya is just, I love the words on it. I vow to wake the beings of the world, to set endless heartache to rest, to walk through every wisdom gate, to live the great Buddha way. This is the kind of fierceness we're going to need to take up this very big challenge of reparations for hundreds of years of wrongdoing and damage. So what will also help us, besides Buddhist principles, are some systems thinking principles. Systems by itself is not necessarily a moral or religious or spiritual angle on things, but we have some beautiful work by Dharma teacher Joanna Macy tying systems to Buddhism, so they just seem to be seamless. But I will highlight here a couple of things. Definitely thinking systems within systems that work at the local level will affect the next level up, that they're related. A policy change at a state might be able to affect a policy change level federally, etc. But feedback is a wonderful way to stabilize things that are going well and to bring about healing. Destructive action, you want to give negative feedback to and curtail with disincentives. You know, slow it down, stop it, say it's not okay, make it illegal. But stabilizing action of the soil, of the community, of culture, that you want to continue to feed with steady inputs and reinforcing feedback. And constructive action, moving in really good positive directions, you keep supporting with new energy and amplify. You tell the stories like we heard today. If everybody on today's participant list told one or two or three of the stories you learned from today, that's amplifying the feedback out into your community of friends and family. So I mentioned the word emergence. In systems thinking, this is looking where systems aren't quite working the way they used to so easily, and how important it is to watch for what's emerging, the little seeds of new ideas, of new thoughts, and see, are they gaining traction? Is this a new direction? It's very exciting to see that. And I must say, for me, it's a little bit like watching a seed come out, and how is it growing? And is it starting like a new vine on the beans? Or is it starting to twist? What's happening at the emergence level? And reciprocity in systems is very much about how the energy returns when it's invested. Like Roxanne's beautiful breathing in and breathing out. Just that reciprocity. So Joanna calls this a kind of moral imperative action. This kind of work, this reparations work, isn't a big burden to hoist up and lug around on our shoulders. It is something that we become. It's something we are. The work changes us. The work we have to do can be seen as a way to come alive. More than a moral imperative, it's awakening to our true nature, a releasing of our gifts. What a beautiful way to think about this work. Not something that's heavy and bad and guilt-laden, but that's full of joy because it's making things right. How good that will feel. How to be engaged that way. How to be part of something that's emerging. Well, let me give you just a few examples I ran into. I found so inspiring. This call for land reparations is appearing in a lot of different places. And those debts that Konda talked about, they're called Pigford debts. You can look that up, learn all about them. There were two major civil rights suits with the USDA and Black farmers, 1997 and 2010, trying to get back some of the land, trying to get some debt relief, like all the other white farmers had gotten. But in the end, they failed. They were not really handled the way they should have been. I'm afraid that probably you could say that the forces of white supremacy and maintaining white farming dominance had something to do with this. But all that land that she mentioned lost was a tragedy. Amazingly, in Biden's American Rescue Plan, these funds are there. That's making things right. And Acres of Ancestry and the Black Agrarian Fund are two of the organizations really working with this. So this is inspiring. Now here's a really bold proposal I'm still chewing on myself, just written about in this last month's Atlantic by David Truer, or maybe it's Troyer. He proposes a way to accomplish land reparations for Native peoples is to return the national parks to them. Not to give them the land, but to give them the management responsibility based on their long-term, multi-generational care and sustained relationship with the land. He makes the argument they would probably do a better job, and it would be fair. This would be a chance to recognize, as he says, that the sins of the past still haunt the present, and that returning the land would be the very best remedy for the earlier theft. And it would be incredibly symbolic because these lands are spiritually significant as national parks. Of course, they're significant to all of us. Look at this Yosemite National Park. It's iconic. It stirs anybody who goes there to visit. So this is something for us to talk about and think about and share this idea. What would this mean? I just find it incredibly exciting. All right, now we can finally start to get to some of what our other speakers were talking about. How do we build this resilience back in? Restoration. Well, this UN World Environment Day that Roshi Joan mentioned and others today, the host for it globally is Pakistan. There are many, many seminars listed on the website for farming and many other things. And the theme right now is ecological restoration of the land, of ecosystems, of species, working at a systems level, every possible way in every possible ecosystem and country. And today launches a whole decade of ecosystem restoration, a decade of hope, we should say. And their theme, more R's, they're wonderful. Pick any one and put it on your altar as a word for the day. Reimagine, recreate, restore. And of course, to grab all the generations, they've got their hashtag Generation Restoration. What an amazing thing to think that if you're a teenager or you're in your 20s, you could be Generation Restoration. You could be, for your country, the ones who start planting all the trees and imagining, reimagining health coming back to your forest or your rivers. So here in the United States, I don't think we can have any idea how powerfully these international days and decades, as is right here on the UNEP website, mobilize political will and the resources in the governments and the agencies of the country to focus and address global problems. And besides addressing the problems, to celebrate and reinforce the achievements that people do by sharing them online and traveling to each other's countries and offering help. Something to learn about and be an ally to. But I also want to mention cultural restoration of relationships. There are many, many broken relationships on this land, and it will take years and generations to rebuild trust through respect and partnership. And this is what it will take, some time, some hanging out time to be okay with each other, to restore these disrupted food relations as an act of justice, to help with that, to help distribute the seeds, distribute the food, to have it be okay and beautiful to talk about corn mothers and hear mother salmon in this artwork. This shouldn't be seen as strange. This should be seen as something that restores soulfulness and interconnection in the web of life. So we have some knowledge holders that among us, much to share. Partnerships between native science, Western science, science based on lived experience, science based on technological expertise, indigenous agroecology, a lot of history to do, collecting food narratives. This is very exciting work for rebuilding resilience. And one example is the red, black, and green New Deal. We've probably heard of the Green New Deal, but this one with its dashing logo has produced an inclusive justice agenda that incorporates what we've been talking about today. They have 9 points: honoring the water, democratizing energy, and so on. But look right in the middle, the core ones right in the middle: free the land. Free the land from the injustice and the karma that's built up on it that's been so horrific. And reimagine and redefine labor. So they go right at challenging this extractive economic system and call to end extractive economies and restore stolen Black capital. So I encourage you to look more at this website, see what they're up to. It's a very invigorating conversation. And I think we're going to hear a lot more from them because they are doing this work of seeing how all these pieces are interlinked and finding the language and calling out the manifesto. They're the new prophets on the land. It's probably going to call for choosing to have a little bit less. I brought back this beautiful Buddha from Wendy's slides because I love it so much, to see the abundance and see that there's enough. There's enough. We can resist some of the consumer economy, have a little bit less that's more enriched by our own growing energy or our own gratitude. This Upaya food verse kind of says it all. Numberless beings give their life and labor that we may eat. May we be nourished, that we may nourish life. Now, this is part of building the resilience, not just of physical health, but of mental and moral health, that there is such a thing as moral health, that we can repair and restore moral injury. And I'm going to encourage you to take a deep time perspective on this. It won't all be done in your lifetime, or probably the lifetime of the next generation or their children or theirs after. We have to take the long picture here, and a kind of Buddhist view, perhaps you could say, working for the benefit of all beings lifetime after lifetime. That the systems we invest in, the feedback loops we amplify and reinforce, are building systems changes for justice into the future. So our great Bodhisattva vows make it really clear. It's a big project. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. All those karmic leftovers and all the delusions are inexhaustible, but we can be part of transforming. So this is a call to embody it, and this truck here on the right is full of seedlings that went right from Green Gulch Farm in Wendy's backyard out to Indigenous peoples. A beautiful project during COVID. So last but most importantly, the paradigm shift that can come when we've built all the links underneath it, the foundation. But it can be a practice from the start as well, a kind of cycling loop, a spiral. Remembering, becoming a member again. We can cultivate this kinship consciousness. It's one Indigenous phrase, seeing all plants and animals and fungal beings as our relatives, our kin, and honoring them, honoring the plant people for the beautiful spirits they are. Seeing them as relatives, remembering that we're related to the food givers, that they're not just a resource. That word resource is an objectification of our relations. And it's, I'll say it was always difficult for me to be the member of a school of natural resources. Every time I saw that word, I squirmed. So this is a call to remember our relatives. And here are the beautiful salmon relatives of the Northwest. And part of remembering is respect, honoring the ancestors and trying to become a good ancestor ourselves. How would that feel if somebody 10 generations down the line looked back and said, oh, that person was a really beautiful elder. They really helped turn the tide. So something else I am so delighted to learn about that's arising right now is this Mother Earth delegation of many beautiful elders, many grandmothers, Indigenous grandmothers of the United Original Nations. If this looks intriguing to you, they are having another one of their awesome calls on June 19th. So again, arising right now, emerging. Where will all of this go? What are these little seedlings? And return in honoring all the beings in the web of life. So it means a kind of active resistance to extractive mind and active promoting of healing and inclusive paradigms. A lot of work, rebuilding partnerships and continually remembering ourselves and all beings as our relatives. So here right in my backyard, Mount Adams is the Western name, Klickitat is the Indigenous name for this, one of the ancient volcanic beings here. And another word from Joanna, when you look at what is happening to our world, it is clear that unless you have some roots in a spiritual tradition that holds life sacred and encourages joyful communion with all your fellow beings, facing the enormous challenges ahead will be nearly impossible. So that's where I think we want to be in the remembering part of this proposal for 5 R's, or maybe it's 10 or 20, remembering this joyful communion with all our fellow beings. So here they are, just a pause to think about these 5 and how they might fit together. As I said, this is a very new conversation for me. This is a talk I've never given before, and I am trying it on myself. But I'm encouraged by people like Melissa Nelson, wanting us to relearn how to truly honor our common home and be better guests, being better relatives and neighbors and allies. So I'm offering today this call for a moral practice that might make the work that Roxanne is doing, that Wendy is doing, that Konda is doing, that Roshi Joan is doing, somehow tie together some kind of a frame that our work reverberates, another R, with each other in a resonating way to grow, to really grow with energy. So I'm going to finish with that, giving my own gratitude as a beginning gardener, gratitude for this land and local food, and for my gardening friends who have helped me become a gardener, my own little backyard plot of collards and the squash from last year, which are planted and coming, and the bountiful harvest of blackberries and apples. And grateful thanks, of course, to Paya for hosting this, and Roshi Joan, Roxanne, Wendy, and Konda, our good speakers, and to all of you for your heart-strong attention to what we're exploring today, what we're just trying to find our way through all this. So let's talk a little bit more together on our schedule, wherever we go next. And I will stop with my screen and we can just see our faces again.
Dear Stephanie, thank you. That was such an extraordinary presentation to really wrap the work, the vision, the dedication of our previous sisters. It just brought it all together in an extraordinary way. And I would like to invite Roxanne to reflect, and then we'll just go, Wendy, if you would offer reflection, Konda a reflection, and then we'll open up for some questions from our community. Roxanne La.
Thank you, Joan. Stephanie, that was wonderful. What a well put together presentation you gave, and such good insight on the whole picture. It was a really good overview. And what I was touched by a lot was the way you started your presentation in just saying where you're from and the journey of your ancestors and stuff. I always, as an Indigenous person, I always want to know where people are from, and they usually say, oh, I'm from Wisconsin, or I'm from New York, and I'm going, no, you're not. You have a bigger story than that. And so I really appreciate you telling the bigger story of yourself, because it is a story we all need to look at, because that story has caused a lot of things to happen in all our lives. And again, like we were talking about, facing the grief of where we are now is super important. And like Wendy was mentioning, we do need to take the time to grieve. And I love that you bring out that part of the story and face it within yourself. So thank you very much.
Wendy.
I felt so deeply, completely following what Roxanne just said, the combination of Konda and Stephanie speaking this afternoon. I felt a turn in me. Am I as willing to sit still, really still, and feel the joy, the unbidden joy coming up out of the earth that I felt in these two presentations? I'm just as emotional as I was this morning, feeling the sorrow. I know we're made of one of these two worlds are one bright and important world. We're not turning away. Lifetime after lifetime, we're willing to stay put and to make amends, to reckon, to realize, to return. and to be rice-eating beings. Thank you, Konda, for the beautiful lotus in muddy water, rice in good old land that is made of potlikker and life force. You know, just feeling the joy, that upwelling from both of you this afternoon. Roxanne, the deep memory, corn and rice dancing cheek to cheek today. Oh, what joy, what a feast beyond measure. Thank you, dear, dear Dharma sisters, Dharma Pharma sisters, let's tell it as it is, and open the world for new possibilities. What a feast of richness. Thank you, beautiful teachers, for this afternoon's thrilling presentation, really thrilling.
Konda.
Oh, wow. I am so full right now. I am so full. Stephanie, thank you. Thank you. Some of the things that you lifted up, you know, starting from the recognition of the 5 R's, the first one, and really, it's so important for me that white people hear from other white people what the things that you're saying, and not from folks of color.
Yeah.
And it means the world to me for you to share what you share. This is the first time. I pray it's not the last time. I pray that you take this and you go on the road with it. It is brilliant. It's heartfelt. It's thorough. It's the systemic look at things, because we want to. The tendency is to honestly be lazy with our minds and just look at one thing or not really connect all the dots. And the way you put that together, I am so grateful for you. I absolutely loved it and am so wanting to be in relationship with you. And I have to say that about everybody, all the speakers. I am your biggest fan. Wendy, Roxanne, and of course, Roshi Joan, you already know that. I am your biggest fan. I'll start the fan club. I learned so much, and I love the authenticity of the voices. This was so well orchestrated, put together, designed. Thank you, Roshi Joan, for that. This was incredible. Stephanie, I loved every word. Every word. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Konda, and Roxanne, and Wendy, dear Stephanie. So I'd like to, be respectful in relation to time, and just to take a few reflective questions. And then I'm going to ask Roxanne at the end of our session today to offer a few words of prayer in conclusion. So Rox, be warned. You're being called on. But I just would love to see if you have any hands that you want to raise or questions you want to put in the chat stream. We are here to reflect with you. We just ask that you be concise. And don't be shy. Oh, this is so sweet. Mickey says, I have such great gratitude for you bringing together all these remarkable women. It felt like a complete beginning. And Mickey, I need to say, as somebody, Joanna is way older than I am. But as someone who's going to be 79 years old shortly, and having moved through the decades of bias, of injustice, of having seen racism raise its head, and Stephanie, you called it again and again, white supremacy and the effects not only on women, people of color, but on the earth. You called it again and again. And finally, I feel we have outed this term. And we're coming to terms with it in terms of how our economies, our governments, our corporations are structured in order to keep this dominance, racial dominance that has caused such suffering through not just decades, we're talking about hundreds of years. So the role of women in turning, of the grandmothers, of the elders, but also you think Greta Thunberg, of the young women whose voices are being sent at this time. It is so important. So thank you, Mickey, for calling out the presence of women in this great turning. And again, let's see, Alicia.
Hi.
And Alicia, if you would say where you're from, what bioregion or what watershed?
Well, I'm currently on Cherokee land in Western North Carolina. And I'm originally much closer to where Konda is right now in South Louisiana, specifically New Orleans. But my family's from the larger South Louisiana region. My question is, after being with all of this, that deeply resonates, and it's so much, and it's like so. It's sort of grand in its largeness, and yet very simple in practice. And my direction that I'm going in now is a desire to combine a lot of what's been said and keep in my own practice with it, but also to do as Konda and many others have called for, is to be in conversation with other people who need to hear it from people like me. And I have ideas about what that might sound like, but I would love to, on a daily basis, in like our small interactions. Yeah, and if that's even possible to answer, since our daily interactions might be so varied.
So maybe just come right to the question.
I think that, so my tendency is to go big, and I take a long view, and I tend to get, I tend to try and draw in a lot of people with my wording, and sometimes that can be too distancing, but also sometimes the wording that I understand and that I come from also might be equally distancing, because it might throw up. It tends to, I think, put people on defenses when they're not used to the vocabulary. And though, you know, we're using words like white supremacy now, our history of understanding what that means is very different from the way that I think we're using it now. That it's individualized, and that it looks like a certain way of dressing and a certain way of speaking, and a kind of heart that we're that is less human. And the way that we're speaking about it is something that is an encultured way of the way that the world has been spinning around for a long time, and we haven't been awake to that because it went invisible a long time ago. And so I guess that like listening to Stephanie's presentation, I took a ton of notes, and in an environment like this where we can have presentations, I'm like, yes. And then what does that look like for folks when we're trying to bring definitions into like trying to like Resmaa Menakem has reminded me of when I read him often is that we need a shared definition, and how do we get to the place of shared definitions?
Great.
And so maybe is that a better? Maybe that's
thank you.
Of it.
Yeah, thank you. Wonderful. I'd like to just invite Dorotea Mendoza, who put a question in the chat stream. Since not all of us or all of you live in places where farms and gardens are necessarily accessible. And Dorotea, could you come online and just share your question with us? I think it's great.
Sure. I put it there because I didn't want to be on this, but okay, sure. Hi, Wendy.
Forgive me.
Hello, Dorotea. Hello.
So my question is, could you, Dharma Pharma Sisterhood, give some encouraging words to those of us living in big cities? I'm in New York City, the Lenape-Munsee land. And we have one working farm here in Queens, and our community gardens are being challenged, being taken over by the city. So just some words of encouragement, words of wisdom. What do we do about that idea of growing our own food?
Dorotea, may I just acknowledge how beautiful the plant world is behind you? And may I just say what my extraordinary gardening teacher, Alan Chadwick, would say, Dorotea, there's more to food than what we put into the hole in the center of our face. I truly hear you. I do not mean to at all diminish what you're saying. I think of the Garden of Happiness and Karen Washington, her work in the Bronx, and so many wonderful activists protecting land for people in New York, in the greater New York area. And I also acknowledge your power and presence in the writing world and in the activist world. And you need and deserve to be well fed. So thinking of that, I want there to be more food for you and more food for the people of New York. This is really more from the heart than a logical statement, but just acknowledging that if you call it out, it will come. And I know young people are starting, I know all over New York and the greater New York area, small plots, even a single pot, even a handful of rice grown in a pot, just to remember and to think of what Konda is saying. That is happening throughout the city as it comes back to life. It's never been out of life, especially not with a person like you living in this area. So may it be so. May farms really begin to be stronger, beginning small and proliferating in New York. Thank you, though, for calling it out.
Can I add a little bit to that? Build on you, Wendy, a little. This is a perfect example of the use of feedback. So you can find things to amplify and reinforce. And by which brands, if you just keep buying Lotus Foods, when you buy Lotus Foods, you're going to know you're supporting Konda. So looking for places in the system to amplify. The other thing I would say is we should not be surprised when the forces of domination push back. They are just going to push back as hard as possible. This is a long tradition, but you can't get derailed by that or waste a lot of energy with how could they do that? They they are on a track themselves. All the systems of reinforcing feedback are going to continue to reinforce domination practices. So the more you understand about it, the less you will lose energy to reactivity. That's really important right now, how you can conserve your own energy to keep the other ship turning in the direction you want. But don't be surprised. We're going to go through some hair-raising pushback times, and they're already showing up in different places. But the forces that are holding true are also holding true with generations behind them that are standing with their feet on the ground, and we can stand with them.
Oh, beautiful, Stephanie. Thank you. LD.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Lara and I'm in Ontario. I believe that we are on the land of the Mississaugas of the Credit River and also the Anishinaabe. I am from Jamaica, and when Roxanne was speaking in her presentation, I'm also a spinner and I weave and I knit. And I saw the beautiful weaving examples, the loom, and I saw cotton. And I know just as a spinner in mainstream spinning, that there is an artist, Louis Garcia, who is also working in his own Pueblo culture to bring back spinning and weaving, and does beautiful work. So I was wondering if the cotton was for oil or if it is for fiber, if fiber arts is coming back, because to me, in my work and in what I'm doing this year, planting has been for my work, and spinning and weaving, and hopefully one day. And in Jamaica, the genocide of the Tainos means that our indigenous cotton spinning culture ended. And that is a great loss to us. And I also thought that it was amazing that I didn't get called on before, because then I was privileged to hear Konda as well, and to see the heaviness that cotton has. And cotton has that for us too, but it is sugar cane. King sugar in Jamaica was larger. So we have reparations as well. I am from the first generation post-colonial, and I was educated in that system. So I have been educated differently than my parents were. So the work is so deep, and I want to thank you for sharing it, and also encourage to remember that the world fiber industrial complex has also taken that from us, and so did the whole pattern of colonialism. That was just stripped. Even though food can be brought back easier, there are great losses there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing that to our attention. And our last question will come from Janie.
I was kind of nervous about speaking on here, but I just had a short question for Roxanne. I just moved to Santa Fe a year and a half ago, and I had never been west hardly at all until I moved here, and I didn't even know about the Pueblo cultures. And I'm from New Orleans originally, and lived in Austin, Texas for a long time. I was just wondering when now I started feeling this, like, oh my gosh, you know, when I started learning about the Pueblo cultures, it just came to my awareness so fast about the colonization and taking of land. And I've been reading a lot about it, and which I never did before, because I never came in contact with native cultures, native indigenous cultures. So I just wondering what should, like, white people who move here, how can we honor and respect the culture, Tiwa culture, when we're here? I'm just wondering what your thoughts are. about that. You know, for when people move here, I don't know. I'm starting to feel like I'm just seeing all the pueblos. I feel like a colonizer myself. Want to take responsibility myself for you know, the sins of what the white people have done. So I'm just curious, you know, to get perspective on this.
Janie, thank you. It's a very brave question.
Yeah.
Roxanne, would you?
Yeah, I'll speak on that. Thank you, Jamie. That is a brave question, and I'm not sure I can give it justice, except to say that that I think all of us sort of coming out and acknowledging the Native people's homelands that everybody is living on is really it's helpful. It's like I have heard so many names of tribes I've never heard before spoken now, and it's kind of like those poor babies that they found at the boarding school buried in the ground. They're finally getting acknowledged. They're finally getting told that they existed, because we were so eradicated from everybody's mind that it's like we never even existed, and that hurts tremendously. And to just get an acknowledgement is a big deal. It's a big step to say, yes, you existed. We are on the land that you originally occupied. It means a lot to us. And you know, Santa Fe is a Tewa, originally a Tewa village, which is part of my peoples. So there's different Pueblo tribes in the area, and just for your knowledge, you know, Santa Fe was one of our Pueblo Tewa villages, ancestral village there. Its original name was White Shell Water Place, and it was obviously a beautiful place that my ancestors had found to live and settled there. And obviously it was a nice enough place that other people kept coming to be there. And I just, you know, I don't think guilt is the way to go. I think it's about how do we go on from here. And if we all are looking at decolonizing ourselves, I think about that for my own self. How do I decolonize myself? And I don't have the issue of dealing with being on someone else's land, but I do have the thing of I am responsible to acknowledge the animals, the plants, all of the species and beings that I am living among right now, being that I decide to live where I live. That sometimes, you know, we laugh because sometimes we want to build something. We've been building ovens or whatever we build, and we'll go like, we want to build this over here, and then someone will say, but the ant people are living there, and then we have to go, oh, we you know, had a big idea that we, you know, we're going to go do whatever we want to do. That's the colonizer mentality. And then we have to go, oh my gosh, somebody already lives there. It's a, you know, an anthill is living there. And we may have to go ask them if it's okay if we can share their space, or, you know, think about it in ways of like, well, we want to put up whatever we want to put up here, but there's some plants and trees that live there already, and maybe they don't want us to live there, but you know, our colonizer mentality may go, well, I want to live there, so we got to cut down the trees and get rid of all the ants or whatever. But maybe all of us need to stop and think, maybe somebody is already there. It may be the ant people, it may be the hummingbird people, it may be that juniper tree. Maybe we need to approach it differently. And who knows how we all figure this out together, but we have to start by that acknowledgement of who's there and how do we step into their space in a respectful, caring, loving way.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you, Roxanne. I don't know if you can hear it, but we're having big rains here in the mountains. So grateful. You know, this is not the time of the year when we usually see these rains. So, but any rain at any time here in the Southwest is a blessing. And it's been a blessing that we've all experienced listening to the four of you. I am so grateful. And I think that those of us who have been on the journey with you today have much to consider. And I know that the feeling I had at the end of the morning was I wanted to walk to the garden and put my hands in the earth. But instead, I went out to the meadow and laid down in the grasses and found I was laying in wild chives, food for hummingbirds. So the wild chive perfume enveloping me. So we have been in the field of wild chives. Thank you, Sister Chives. And I'd like to, again, to say we could not do this without your generosity, friends who are gathered here. Your donations go to our teachers and make it possible for us to meet in this way. So please donate generously if you can. It would really, it would be great. And if you've given, you can maybe consider giving some more. And I'd like to now invite Roxanne to offer a concluding prayer.
Thank you, Joan. I'm going to do a prayer in my language, just so you can hear the language of our people, something a little different. But what I'm asking is for the prayers of all the beings and spirits around us to come and take care of us. And also as a reminder of what we always remind ourselves is to be respectful, to care for each other, and to love each other, and then to also give thanks for being loved by all that's around us. So, imbiak di jian taran ko ki kaje matuen kutawaha ne raki we rak de megi de heginang he worian sharing ko herang ho ne ra he walking pundi ting aying namin navitoa de he in da ove he hami navitoa in wati he ve mani kuta nambi wati haki in pe sang pe akum pe rang pe makoa nang sikinige enye her opari wepi ping nang hatung aveto hamba jung nachong and porti maye pare e werbo takiri boy visige ami hera ivi aking ami hera ivi hege ami herang ho ne ha ho owinge he walking pundi kutawa ha disigiang hera ho.
Thank you. Thank you, friends. May your life go well. And may we actualize the 5 R's and more R's as we restore ourselves to the earth and thus restore the earth and restore our lives and the lives of many to dignity. Thank you.